Hi everyone, you are viewing Cloud Ranger's Microsoft Azure training. As you know, I'm Sean Ismail. I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP. That's my contact information below there, my email, Twitter, blog, LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as slides where it will be posted. So today is a continuation of our Azure Recovery Services, and this is the part two where we are going to look into Azure Virtual Machine Backup or Azure VM Backup. So this is actually part of your 7533 exam. So I'm going to cover pretty much everything that's required for you to look into this, as well as a little bit more. So it helps you work this out in an organization if you're going to use this as your backup solution. All right, so let's get started. So in introduction, basically what Azure VM backups do is that it backs up the virtual machines that are running in Microsoft Azure. And these are virtual machines that you have deployed from the gallery or your customer image, means your custom image that you might have taken from your own premises. Okay, so these are basically virtual machines. These are not virtual machines that are running on Hyper-V or VMware or physical machines somehow. Um, just strictly Microsoft Azure virtual machines. And the different kind of virtual machines that you can see over here, it can do is the ARM deployed virtual machines, which is Azure Resource Manager deployed virtual machines. It can also do classic virtual machines if you have classic virtual machines out there. And it will do virtual machines that are running both on standards as well as premium storage. So if you have virtual machine that are running on premium storage, it's going to do that as well. It's and just to let you guys know that it was premium storage virtual machines were not supported. It just got its support, and it is, I mean, you are able to do it right now. Okay, and as you know, Azure services change almost weekly or monthly now. Things change quite a bit. So always consult the documentation to see what's supported or what's not. I mean, it's 2016 right now as you are viewing this video, and that's what we have. So let's get into a little bit of internal workings. This is actually going to be a very smooth session. It's going to be quite hands-on and not too much complicated. So it's pretty decent. But I want to get the internal workings out of the way here. This is a picture I took off from Microsoft Azure documentation. And these are not necessarily just steps. Uh, these are just a continuation of the process. So what I'm trying to say here is that how one after the other different steps that are taking place. All right. So the first thing is that Azure Backup Service, it will trigger the backup extension, which is part of through the VM agent. And what will happen is that once the backup extension is triggered, it will take a point in time snapshot of the virtual machine. Okay, so in this virtual machine, it shows that it has the operating system disk, it has regular disk 1. So what backup extension will do is it will take a point in time snapshot of these disks. That's what is happening in the back end. It's using VSS to take the snapshots for you curious guys out there. And once the snapshot is taken, what happens is the the backup service is going to take the data and transfer it to the backup vault to store the snapshots there. Okay, so that's what it is doing. It's taking all this, and this is the target, the backup vault. If you do not know what backup vault is, you go ahead and watch the Azure Recovery Services Part 1, where I discuss what backup vault is and what does it do and how to create one, obviously. So, so initially, it will take the snapshots and put it all in the backup vault. Okay. So the next time you actually run the backup, let's say you're going to run the backup the next day, it will take the snapshot and only transfer the data that has been changed, the block of data that has been changed. Okay. So it is very efficient. If it takes the snapshot and sees that something in there did not change, it will not transfer that data. So this makes it highly efficient, and it takes less time to actually back up a virtual machine. Okay. Once the transfer is complete, so once everything is in the backup vault, the snapshot is actually removed. You don't need the snapshot anymore, and a recovery point is created. And I'll show you when we take the backups what recovery points are. Basically, if you have ever done a client like Windows 8 or 8.1, Windows 10, whatever, if you had have done backups before, or taken a snapshot before, you'll see that there were recovery points, if you recall, that you can actually go to those recovery points on different dates, different times, and recover that virtual machine exactly how it was at that time when the snapshot was taken. So different recovery points will be created once the backup is completed. All right. So not to get into too much details, the basic high level steps is you need to create a backup vault. The first thing, like I mentioned, go to part one if you do not know how to do that. If you know how to do that, or you have it from the previous uh, video, just keep that vault. And what we are going to do is we are going to select a scenario and set policy, which will identify and run initial backup. So what we are going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you how all of this done in a moment. And one thing we want you to remember here is that backing up virtual machine is a local process. What I mean by that is that you need to have the virtual machine and the backup vault in the same region, uh, because it's a local process. You cannot take a virtual machine which is, for example, in East US and back it up in a vault which is in West US. I mean, you might have a scenario or an architecture where you have virtual machines which are in East US. You might have a DR site in West US. You cannot use one vault to do that, right? So you can create multiple vaults in your subscription. You will need a vault in this scenario on your East US side and another vault in West US to make sure that locally those virtual machines are kind of backed up, right? Okay, so let's not waste any time. There's quite a bit in the demo that I want to show you to back up the VMs. So let's go to the client computer. Actually, before I go there, I just fixed this. I knew that this didn't look right. So it's create backup vault, select scenario and set policy, and run initial backup. So you need to run the very first time the initial backup where the virtual machine is being backed up, okay? I just thought that I would correct that and get back to you guys because it did not look right at all. Okay, so let's go to the client machine now. All right, so this is what we are going to do. I just have a basic virtual machine that is created in Azure. It's a normal virtual machine, nothing fancy. I've just created that. You can create one, and I have RDP'd into it. I just went and created three basic text files here called test doc 1, 2, and 3, just regular files for our demonstration purpose. But that's all I have here with the virtual machine. In Recovery Services Vault, from my last session, if you recall, I created a vault, Ranger Vault 1. I still have mine over here. If you don't have one, go ahead and create one. It's in East US 2. This virtual machine is also in East US 2. This is what I was mentioning earlier, that they need to be in the same region for this to happen, okay? So let's go to the vault here. And in the vault right now, we do not have anything that is going on. I do have my file backup that is running somewhere, but unrelated to this session for sure. So let's go ahead, and the first thing we need to do is let's go ahead and add a backup, okay? It's a little different from my last session where we are going and doing something else. Here, it is asking us backup goal select. If you recall, last time we went over here, we did on premises, and in there, over there, we did our files and folders. So let's come over here, files and folders. So this time we are going to do Azure. So our workload is running in Azure. It's Azure Virtual Machine. And the only option that we'll have over here is the virtual machine, okay? So in Azure, it's going to be the entire virtual machine, not the files and the folders, the entire VM. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on OK. It's going to run a little discovery in the back end, and it has already completed that. So I want to show you something over here. This is basically the policy, means the default policy means how you are and when you are um, backing up this virtual machine. So by default, there is a policy that's created called default policy where it will do a backup at 10:30 a.m. every day, and there is a retention range that is set up that's saying that retain backup taken every day at 11:30 a.m. for 30 days. So you'll have 30 days worth of snapshot, which is one snapshot each day of this virtual machine. So you'll end up with 30 virtual machine snapshots, okay, based on the default policy. Now, For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to keep it as a default policy, but I want to edit the policy and show you that this is actually taking it to the documentation. It's a very decent documentation. You can actually see how you do this, but I'll show you in a moment here how to do that. I will come over here, create a new policy, okay, rather than the default one. And if I can only select that, the browser acts up a little bit once in a while. Just give me a moment. Okay. All right. So when we are in create new, you can create a new policy here. Just say my backup policy 1. Okay. You can name anything. I want to say daily, do this at, I don't know, 6 a.m. every morning. My retention is going to be from the 6 a.m. one for 180 days for the daily backup point. There's a retention for a weekly backup point that, okay, there's a daily backup, weekly backup, and the monthly backup, and you also have a yearly backup. So for you backup folks, this should look very simple, right? So retention of daily backup, I'm going to keep it for 180 days. Retention of weekly backup, which is going to be, let's say every Sunday, the one that is at 6 a.m. every Sunday, I want to keep it for 104 weeks. And monthly, I'm going to say that it's going to be week based. So the very first Sunday at 6 a.m., that's going to become my monthly backup retention point. And there's going to be a yearly one, which is January 1st Sunday. We are going to have that backup taken, and that will become my yearly backup point, right? So this is how the retention policy is actually working over here. For you backup guys, this should completely make sense on how to do this. I'm not going to get into too much details here. But for our purposes, let's do the default policy. I think I'm happy with that. And what it's going to ask for next is that what do you want to back up? So there is a discovery that was done in the back end, and it happens really fast. It basically shows the only virtual machine we have. If you have multiple virtual machines over here, you can definitely select them over here or do them one by one. It's really up to you. But we have one, so we are going to go ahead and select that. So let's go ahead and do that now. And once that configuration is done, we have to enable the backup. So let's go ahead and enable the backup. It's submitted the deployment, and it's enabling the backup right now. And what's happening right now is if you go, whatever we did, it did not create the backup. I mean, it did not start any backup jobs or anything like that. What happened was that it created the configuration. So let's go over here. Sorry, the wrong one. Let's go backup items here. That's where we can see. And it has still not gotten that because it's still doing the deployment. So we're going to give it a little bit of time for this configuration to happen. You can see the virtual machine here when that will be configured, that's part of the backup items. Let's look at the jobs on what's going on. This is your running. So you can see that the configure backup is actually in progress. So in the backup jobs, it's a very interesting thing actually. This is where you actually go view the jobs, backup jobs, and you can see that. You can see that it actually keeps a little bit of a history over here. So what I did earlier when I was just doing this as a trial for practice on like yesterday, you can see that whatever it did, I disabled the backup, I deleted the backup, doing whatever. But anyways, right now I'm configuring the backup. It's still in progress. So let's give it a little bit of time. Okay. Alrighty, it just said deployment succeeded. So let's get out of here, come back and see if it actually updates that. It should say configure backup completed, which is great. And what we are going to do here is we are going to go back to the protected items because now this is a protected item. And you can see that the virtual machine name came over here and it says it's Azure virtual machine and it's showing you a last backup status and it's showing the backup policy. Okay, this was not there earlier when we were looking at it. So, all right, we have registered the virtual machine to do this right now. So it's there. Now, you can see there is a warning. It says that initial backup is pending. So every time you register a virtual machine and configure backups for it, you need to do the first initial backup, okay? And you can see it's there. The best way to deal with this is that, well, let's go, depending on the time. I mean, you don't do this during production time, or you know that it's going to, affect your virtual machine backup. It should not restart the virtual machine or anything like that. It's a regular backup, right? So do this backup now when you are ready to take the first initial backup. So for our test purposes, we can do it right now. You can just go over here, do a backup now. So it's asking, do you want to start back up this virtual machine? We say yes, and it's going to trigger the event to actually go and start backing up. So at this point, if you recall from our slides, it is going to the virtual machine agent and going and activating the backup extension and saying that, hey, start doing this virtual machine backup. Okay, so the best place to track all this is go back to jobs here, and in the jobs, we should see the initial backup is being taken right now. Okay, so it says backup in progress, and it just started. So just to let you know, and you can see the virtual machine is still up and running, right? I mean, so nothing has changed. Everything is fine. So just to let you know that this takes up to 30 minutes for, at least for the size of the virtual machine I had, depending on your size, it could take longer or shorter. So it takes up to 30 minutes to actually go take the initial backup of this virtual machine. And while that happens, I'll just continue with the slides and we'll come back to this, okay? So while this virtual machine is backing up, let's talk a little bit about performance and resource utilization. Um, in production, I mean, things are much easier when you're doing it in the lab, right? I don't have to worry about timing. I don't have to worry about how many virtual machines I'm backing up, what's happening. But in production, things get a little hairy because you have to start considering looking at the entire environment when you are doing this. You might have 60 virtual machines or 70 virtual machines running in your production environment in Azure, and you are trying to back up everything. There are performance and resource utilization you need to worry about. Okay, and Azure backup performance is impacted, or most of the time they're impacted by Azure storage limits. So you do have some limitation on the storage account where your virtual machine hard drive or VHD is placed. So most of your backup limitation will be based on your storage account. Okay, so let me actually show you a little quick document here. I'm going to show you how you can find this out by yourself. So go to azure.microsoft.com. This is the basic site, as you know. Microsoft's Azure documentation is one of the best documentation out there from Microsoft, hands down. So I'll show you where you can find that information. Go to Management and Security over here. Here, Billing. And in Billing, you'll find Azure Limits, Quotas, and Constraints. I want you to go over there. This is a document you need to be very familiar with when you are, let's say, when you are doing your 534, which is actually more architecture and design decisions that you take in an environment, not so much in 533. But if you are doing your production work after looking at these videos, definitely take a look at it, okay? So what we want to look at is storage accounts. So let me actually go and find that. Storage accounts per subscription and stuff. So if you look over here, it's saying that storage accounts per subscription, you can have up to 100 storage accounts per subscriptions is default, and there is a maximum limit. Sometimes when you want to exceed this limit, you have to contact Azure support and give them a reason why you want more than this and take it from there, okay? So let's click on storage accounts here. Nope, I did not want to click that actually. I want to go over here, Control F, storage accounts, and go to the next one. So here, I'm showing the subscription limits. Let's go back. Okay, here are the storage service limits. Okay, the max number of storage accounts per subscription is 100. Total in each storage account, you can keep up to 500 terabytes, which is quite big. So look at this service limitations here, okay? Max file in a size. So this is a very interesting document where you can actually see that how much capacity you have, how to design your storage accounts. A lot of people initially, when they start off with Azure training, they said, "Hey, why do I ever need storage accounts more than one storage account? I mean, I can put like 500 terabyte." Well, you have to start thinking about performance. If you have, let's say, 50 different virtual machines and they're doing multiple different things, each virtual machine has the OS disk and multiple other disks, eventually you will find out that you're going to have some kind of performance issue. So you need to start splitting your virtual machines into multiple storage accounts in a production environment, depending on how many you have. Maybe if you have 5 or 10 virtual machines, it will not matter. But when you have 50, 60, and even more, it does matter quite a bit. And look at this. I wanted to show you this one, the target throughput for a single blob. So with your single VHD file up to 70 megabytes per second, it will transfer, or the throughput of it will be target throughput for single file share. So it's telling you all the different max egress per storage account. So, it's 20 gigabits per second, which is pretty good, but it can affect your backup or in general your production, and you need to understand how this works. Okay, so take a look at this document, go through it. Don't go crazy. There's a lot of information that you probably might not care about yet, but when you do a production environment, you need to look into all these things to actually make the most out of it. And there are scenarios where it's quite important to know this information. Okay, I usually have this like totally taken and printed out for any architectural sessions I go into or talking to the clients. I remember some of this, I just remember now off top of my head because I'm just doing this so many times. But take care of this when you are actually doing your backups. So your backups will be affected by this. All right, so the thing that we wanted to talk about was the max egress per storage account and the total storage rate, uh, the storage rate per storage account. Those are the things you have to go look up, and you have to make sure that you are within those limits. There are other considerations, the number of disks and backup schedule. So if you have a virtual machine with 5 disks, another virtual machine with 5 disks, you have to consider those, that you can have only so many spindles or so many disks per storage account. After that, it starts affecting performance, right? So in your backups, you have to take care of that. Now, backup schedule is also something very important. Like, you can do, let's say, 5 virtual machines at the same time, but it is going to hit your max throughput uh, uh, threshold of your storage account. If you remember the conversation we just had on that Microsoft documentation page, right? Maybe 5 is not going to be an issue, but if you try to do 50 different virtual machines all at the same time and they all are in one storage account, you're definitely going to be hit by performance stuff, right? Um, so these are some of the throughputs that I thought were important. So when we are doing the initial backup, 170 megabits throughput, incremental backup, it can go to up to 640 megabits per second, depending on what it is backing up as well. Now, let's go to the next slide. I want to show you some of the best practices that I follow. So with the best practices, do about 4 classic VMs at the same time. So if you have classic VMs, do not do more than 4. It's going to start affecting something somewhere. 40 resource manager VMs at the same time. As you can see, there is a lot of reasons to go to the ARM model or Azure Resource Manager model, because you can do 40 VMs at the same time. Should not affect you much, but yeah, if you have like hundreds of VMs, 40 of them together, that totally makes sense, right? Schedule VM backups at non-peak times. Like, do it when the business hour. If the business has a specific business hour, don't do it during that time. Do it after. I mean, after business hours, late night, after midnight or something like that. If it's a 24/7 environment, then you might want to stagger them a little bit throughout the day, depending on how you want to do that. And spread the VMs in different storage accounts. Like I mentioned, that this is probably the most important thing and most likely the thing that will affect your backups most, because you'll probably not consider it as much. Like, please spread your virtual machines in different storage accounts as much as possible uh, to uh, to backup. It's not only just backup. Take your virtual machines, sit down with that document that I just showed you, map it out on a piece of paper that, hey, I'm going to have 20 virtual machines. This is how much storage it's going to take. Uh, Now let's find out how many storage accounts do I need. Do the math, figure it out at that time, okay? So really, this is at the end of the slide. Let's go ahead to our virtual machine over here and see what's going on here. Looks like it is, so the triggering backup, it has triggered. Let's close this and come back to the jobs and see once again if the job is still running. Shouldn't it should still run? Yeah, it's only been 10 minutes. I'm going to pause the video and wait for this to actually complete to show you that how the backup is done and how we do a proper restore. Okay, so bear with me here. I mean, it's going to be magic for you, but I'll have to wait. See you in a bit. Just to let you know, a couple of minutes have passed, but we are still waiting for the initial backup to complete. Like I mentioned, it takes about 30 minutes. I want to talk about one quick thing I just remembered. This was an Azure virtual machine that I created from the gallery. So by default, what it did was it had the Azure VM agent installed on there because it was already it's part of it does that when you're creating a virtual machine from the gallery. And when we were enabling the backup on that virtual machine through the agent, it actually sends the backup extension, and that's what is actually making this whole thing happen right now. If you have a custom image that you took from your on premises and you have migrated it to Azure, you probably will not have the you probably will not have the VM agent installed already, and this will fail. So what you need to do, and I've covered this in the past in creating virtual machines, is you need to go and download for free from Azure website the Azure Virtual Machine Agent on your custom image that you upload to Azure. Okay, so do not forget that because it might be very frustrating when you have done that and you're trying to back it up, just wondering what is going on? Why can't I back up this virtual machine? Well, you can't back up because it's failing because it does not have an agent. Download the agent, install the agent, and when you try to register this, it won't work out. Okay, so back to pause again. All right, so the backup is done. Took about 35 minutes over here, approximately 35 minutes, depending on the size. Anyways, so our machine is backed up right now. So let's do this. Let's go over here. Let's go under protected items. And now we should see that warning message gone. And it says Ranger backup VM1. The last backup is a success over here. Okay, so it actually tells you it's under default policy and all that. Great. So let's go back to the virtual machine over here. Right now, let's do something weird. If this virtual machine ever gets corrupted, or say there is some data, I mean, ideally, this is not what I would use virtual machine backups for. I'm just showing this as a demonstration. Usually you do virtual machine backups is if something actually catastrophic happens to the entire virtual machine. Like deleting files, you can actually do what we did in session one, is have actually file and folder backups done on the Azure virtual machines as well to back up the data. So I'm just doing this as a part of a demonstration that, hey, this virtual machine has some changes. These files are gone now. Okay, so the way you restore this is you come over here and you go over here and you say restore. Okay, so I'm going to do something on purpose here. Let's go and do restore. It will actually show you that there is a restore point that was created. So this is what I was telling you, that these are the restore points that are created. So these are the different restore points. I'm saying that I want all restore points, and this is the last restore point that we have over here. And I want to click OK for this virtual machine, and you can see it's coming up with a wizard. So what's happening over here is that the virtual machine backup was done and stored in the backup vault. And the way the backup vault stores this is it basically keeps the snapshot. It does not keep the configuration of the virtual machine. So the only way you can actually restore this is by taking that snapshot and deploying to a new virtual machine. It will exactly be the same on, I mean, how it was taken a snapshot on, but as you can see, it will ask you for some more details. So we'll be like, all right, so let's go ahead and put the virtual machine details over here. Let's say you in production environment, you obviously want the same name, right? So let's go over here. The name of the machine is or was, let's say, copy this information. Nope, I don't want to do that. I'm going to come over here. And you can click the entire thing and you can see a restore over here. Okay, maybe this is a good thing. So come over here. I'll show you what's going on here. Let's click on this and bring up the entire virtual machine over here. Last backup was success. It will tell you when things were done. There's one restore point in the last 7 days, one in the last 30 days. It will show you the policy and everything. So you can stop doing the backup of the virtual machine from here. As you can see, you can resume and you can even delete the backup. What we want to do is restore because we know that something happened with the virtual machine, something is not right. Okay, so let's hit on restore over here. Let's take the last restore point. We know that this is the virtual machine name. We want it in the same resource group. We'll keep everything same over here. Okay, everything is the same. So what's going on here? Let's see. Ranger 001. Okay, so that is great. The error that you're seeing right now is that a virtual machine with this name already exists in the selected resource group. So this is very interesting. Azure Backup is expecting that this virtual machine is no longer there. Okay, so the only way you can restore this virtual machine is either give it a different name. So rather than the name we have over here, Backup VM1, let's call it restore and everything will be fine. I guess this is going to go too much. Okay, 3 and 15 characters. Let's just call it VMR. Okay, we'll know that when it's R, it's the restored one. Just for an example, I'm not going to do this actually right now. So this is great. In one way, you can restore this virtual machine as a different virtual machine, take the data and bring that back. But like I said, this is too much work if you want to just do it for files and folders. We know from session one, I mean the part one of this sessions is that you can use different method to do files and folders. Technically, Azure Backup expects that this virtual machine is corrupted and it's no longer there. So the only way you can actually do that, and make sure you think about this many times before you actually do in production, is come over here to the virtual machine. Let's go over here and say delete. Okay. So what will happen is that I'm just doing this right away. It's in my lab, so I'm not caring so much. I'm just deleting the virtual machine. I'm assuming that something so bad has happened to this virtual machine is that one, by mistake, it got deleted because somebody had a script somewhere which did not put a check in place, or it got corrupted, that there's nothing I can do about this virtual machine. And the only way I can deal with this is delete this. And once it's deleted, it will no longer have that restore problem that we were looking, that a virtual machine already exists with this name. We're going to go ahead and put the same name that we had and restore this virtual machine. The parameters that you saw over there is like a couple of parameters, right? It needs the name, it needs the network it needs to be on, it needs the storage account it needs to be on, and resource group, and that's about it. The only thing that I can think of in real scenario where you'll have to make or do some, have some considerations is the IP address, right? So right now for this virtual machine, I did not have a static IP address, but in your production, I'm assuming that it will have a static IP address. You want to make sure that once the virtual machine is restored, the name is there and everything is there, and you assign the same static IP address back to the virtual machine. Okay, so just to recap, once again, we were trying to restore this virtual machine, but since the virtual machine was already there, Azure Backup did not let us restore this virtual machine with the same name. We could have restored this with a different name and take the data from there or look at it or do whatever we need to do. Or we are expecting that this virtual machine backup was done for catastrophic failures where the virtual machine 1 got deleted or 2 got corrupted really bad and we cannot boot into it, and we manually go delete this and we are going to restore that. Okay, so let this virtual machine deletion complete. I'm going to pause the video and I'll come back and I'll show you that the virtual machine does not exist, and then we will go to the backups that we had and we are going to restore the virtual machine with the same name and make this thing happen. All right, guys. Alrighty, so it disappeared. So if I come back to virtual machines over here, I no longer have a virtual machine. All right, I know this sounds scary, but let's go ahead and do this. And please don't try this in your production environment. Try to do this in a lab first. And if you have an issue in the production environment, you can obviously recover. And that's what I'm trying to show you over here. But don't try this on production environment. Anyways, so that virtual machine does not exist any longer, but go under protected items or backup items over here. And I want to show you over here that it actually shows that this protected item is still there. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on this one. And now we should be able to restore. Okay, so let's grab that name from there. Uh, Here, yeah, this was the name of my virtual machine, correct? Correct. Copy. Let's go ahead and restore. I'm not going to probably go through the entire restore of this one, but I'm going to show you that it will start appearing there. Create a restore group. This is my restore group. Everything stays the same. Storage account stays the same. Restore. When we click restore, it triggered the restore of this virtual machine. Check this out. It's probably not going to be here yet, but shortly it will appear in the virtual machines. I'll give it a little bit of time. Okay. So the only thing that changed over here is most likely just because Azure is going to go to the virtual network and the subnet and assign an IP address. That's the only thing that changed. So if this was a production environment, the name of the virtual machine would be same, but we need to go ahead and make sure the static IP is done. Everything else is going to be the same, guys. It's going to take the snapshot, put it back in there, and be like, hey, we took a snapshot of this virtual machine, so we got it. Don't worry, and it will take it there. Okay, so give it a little bit of time. Actually, let's go over here. We should see this under the jobs, right? Everything should be under the jobs. Jobs. We should say backup jobs. It's restoring somewhere. Yep, a restore is in progress. I can't remember how long does it take to restore, but we should see the virtual machine pop up at some point here. I'm obviously pausing this quite a bit. It's in progress. Well, let's give it some more time. I mean, there is quite a bit that's going on in the back end, right? I mean, Azure Backup Service is going and figuring out which is the snapshot, which is storage account to actually transfer data to. And let's remember that these are all in the same region, probably in the same data center, so it should not take that long. But we know the backup itself took 35 minutes complete. Should be a little bit less than that. I'm just waiting for it to pop up here, really. Actually, let's. It's been 8 minutes already. I want to show you the progress right now, what it's doing. So you can actually click on this one. It will show you which step of restoring it is in right now. So looks like the reason it hasn't showed up is because created the restored VM is not even started. Right now it's still transferring data from the vault. So all the data that was there, it's actually being transferred from the vault. It takes a little bit of time. It's only been 8 minutes. So let's wait up a little bit more to actually see this virtual machine start appearing. And I do have a slight idea on why it's taking this long. It's actually been 12 minutes. What I ended up doing is when I was restoring this, I did not restore it to the same storage account. It seems like I had two storage accounts here. They're all in the same region, by the way, so it worked out. But rather than going to this storage account, I went over here. So it is taking a little bit of time to push the data back to that storage account. Not that it stores there initially, but all right, it's been 21 minutes now. Let's go ahead and see if the virtual machine actually kicked in. It's taking a little while. Oh, there you go. There you go. So look at this, guys. So right now it's still creating, and I knew that it's still creating, but look, the virtual machine is back. And this is what I wanted to show you over here. If I click in here, it went and kicked in 2 cores, 3 gigs. It went and got a different public IP address, obviously, because it was not set to static. I bet the network interface went and got a different 10005. It went and picked up the same IP address because that was the only virtual machine there. But anyways, the exercise that I was having right now, and see it's up and running right now. So technically, if we go and do connect right now, we should be able to connect. Let's kick this in. Still taking a little time. It's probably just booting up right now, but which is great. What I was trying to show over here is that, hey, this virtual machine was gone. We went and deleted it. You saw that. The entire thing was gone. And it's back again. It's back again. And you can actually go in this virtual machine and everything will be there just the way it is. Now, a couple of things. It uses VSS in the backend, volume shadow copy in the backend. So some of you might think that, hey, what does it do if this was a virtual machine that has some application, like let's say the domain controller or exchange. So it does an application level VSS. It's application aware. It's just that if this was a domain controller, for example, this restoration you would have to do this through PowerShell, because domain controllers, virtual machines like those, have some other considerations that needs to take place when they are restored. But if this was like a generic server doing anything else, this would be more than enough. You can just restore the virtual machine, and at that snapshot point, you're essentially good to go, so you wouldn't have any issue. Okay, I just want to put it out there. Let's try And this took a little bit of time. I'm sorry about that. I mean, well, for you it probably didn't matter. For me it mattered quite a bit. I had to wait all this time while this was doing that. And the reason behind that is that this kind of demos where I want to show you the entire process to actually make sense of things will take time. So if you're doing this in the lab, give yourself some time to do this. And this session might feel a little rushed, but that's the thing though. You want to like pause the video and go and do this and wait for it and sync yourself and do the lab as things come along, right? So make sure that you give yourself some time when you're doing this lab. And if you're not clear, rewind a little bit and just go back a little bit and follow through again. Anyways, so the virtual machine is back. As you see, it's up and running. And the vault over here, job, the job is still probably continuing over here. Let me see what is the job status. Maybe it's done. It was running the last time we were seeing this. So let's go back to the job, backup jobs, and it's in progress. So, it's still trying to restore a bunch of stuff. That's why when we go to the virtual machine, we're having an issue connecting. But you can see the virtual machine is back, and that's my main goal, right? Anyways, so that concludes this demo. Let's go back to our slides. And that was it really, guys. So we just went over the virtual machine backup, Azure virtual machine backup, a whole virtual machine backup actually. It's part of the 75-30-30 curriculum. So, and I hope that this video is giving you some more idea of how to actually do in production, because essentially what we did is something you would do in production. Well, it will be a little bit more thought through, a little bit more planned than what I did. I mean, you can see I actually did make an error. Rather than the original restore point in the storage account, I went and did it in a different storage account. It's in the same region, so it did not matter. But if it was in a different region, it would definitely matter quite a bit. Okay. Anyway, so that concludes our part 2 of Azure Recovery Services, Azure VM Backup. There's going to be more sessions on this, so I'm going to still continue on ARS or the Azure Recovery Services and show you more things in the next session, which will be part 3. But till then, that's my training site and YouTube. That's where you are viewing this video. The slides are going to be posted there. I already posted the last couple. This one will be there hopefully soon enough. That's my Twitter. Email sean@cloudranger.net and LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. And like I mentioned in my last session, if you want a quick response, and lately I'm noticing I'm much more efficient on YouTube comments to actually reply back to your questions rather than emailing me. Send some comments over there. And you know what, guys? One thing I don't see is other people kind of chiming in when there's a question. If there is a question that you think you can answer, if you're not even too sure, just go ahead and give it a shot. I'll take a look at it and I'll make sure that people are getting the right answer. But it's the whole idea is for the community to actually interact and find each other and see what you can do together. Anyways, thank you for viewing, and please like the videos on YouTube. It'll be pretty inspiring. All right, thanks guys. I'll see you in the